Hey everyone, today we're ranking every Killer Mori in Dead by Daylight. We're including all the available Moris for this video, including alternate Moris, quick Moris, and cosmetic based Moris too. Let's get into it. Boring Moris. To kick us off, Trapper has a particularly dull Mori that comes as a product of being the very first killer to ever get one. This one feels quite weightless and lacking in any story or meaning. He's just slashing away, with the foot down being the only interesting touch really. Billy follows suit with essentially the same Mori, except with a chainsaw. Instead of slashing away, he plunges his chainsaw down. It's a bit more effective, making use of his power, but certainly nothing special. Wraith rounds off our original three at the bottom here, having the best by a small margin, and it's for that leg pull, pulling the survivor toward him before he slams down. It's still fairly boring, but that's a nice touch I think. Okay Moris. Skull Merchant has quite an underwhelming Mori, and one which many have pointed out over the years doesn't make much sense, with the survivor seeming confused to her whereabouts despite just being downed by her. It's really odd. I do like the hand running up the side though, and how she lifts them up. It has something, but it's flawed. Twins with no victor is pretty brutal, but just not really interesting or engaging in any particular way. She just uses her sickle to slowly smack in different places, with the final pull-up being the most impactful moment. It pales in comparison to her Mori with Victor. Sadako Condemned is a Mori that is quite iconic, yet also very simple in-game. It's good, but also short, and there's not too much interaction. That eye though is very iconic, so it deserves to at least be in a solid okay. There's something spine-chilling too about the survivor clutching their heart. Pig is often found disappointing as she doesn't utilize her power really. She instead goes for a slash, which is reminiscent of how Tap was attacked by Jigsaw. This may even be purposeful on Amanda's part to try and remind Tap of what happened. It is visually very simple, but there's a harsh brutality to it. I do think a trap version could be interesting to add, but maybe as a separate secondary Mori if the survivor's wearing a trap already. Brutal Moris. Twins with Victor is a bit more effective in my opinion, with there being a key interaction between Charlotte and Victor as she looks down to him, with the two agreeing almost it's his turn to attack. It's a great use of their pairing and different methods of attack too. Vecna Reclaim is doable after two-hooking a survivor with either the hand or eye of Vecna. It's an interesting finisher too, with these purple spikes bursting from the ground, piercing the survivor, and then the skeletons pulling the survivor into them. I do like that touch and the skeleton involvement, which makes it a bit more dynamic. It shows off additional Vecna powers too, which is cool. Pyramid Head Tormented is a quick finisher which, whilst very short, is also incredibly brutal and efficient and feels very fitting for Pyramid Head. A swift slam down with this huge sword feels very fitting for the killer titled The Executioner. Spirit's Mori has her slash away with her targeting the same locations on the survivor as her father did to her. It adds a bit of depth and meaning beyond it being an angry rage-fueled attack, and even more if you consider that she sees the survivors as her father. With all this said though, I do find the visuals a bit lacking and not particularly engaging. The story is there though. Blight I do like for its unique approach, and how he seems to almost be using the freedom of the Mori to experiment and test on the survivors, using his serum on them, with it failing and him bursting the bubble. Quite unique and also just really freaky, revealing the horrors of the serum and its effects. Huntress's is brutally efficient, with her just slamming down, then following it up with more slams. This one is pretty disturbing too, with how the survivor tries to reach for the axe and pull it out. Ugh, simple but fitting for Huntress for sure. Freddy has a pretty simple Mori which makes reference to a kill in the 2010 remake. It's quite effective here too, and rather cinematic, with Freddy appearing behind the survivor, creeping up and plunging his hand through. It's a little over the top, but it's a solid reference and Mori for a character which otherwise feels quite neglected in DBD. Dracula I find to have sort of an interesting Mori. It begins with the bats distracting, then Dracula swiping the survivor and drinking their blood. It's fairly basic, but it feels like the lore accurate way Dracula would take down the survivors, if he didn't have to abide by the trial rules. His disgust of humans is very present, and whilst I like this Mori, I feel like it's missing some oomph. Plague treats her Mori a bit ritualistically, with her knocking the survivor down, then beginning a chant. She then takes them and seemingly floods them with vomit. It's pretty horrific and does fit her very well. Similar to some others, it doesn't have much brutality, but it is incredibly freaky and disturbing. The attack part is maybe a bit too short though to be a real finisher. Doctor has a unique approach to his Mori, with him not even using a weapon, but instead supercharging his shock power by rubbing his hands together before unleashing it all. It's nice to have a different approach, and it is still very freaky, especially with the smoke rising off the survivor at the end. Artist has a weird Mori as Moris go. She implants the crow into the survivor's mouth only for it to be sort of birthed out of their stomach. I'm not sure either. It does fit her though, and her movement during this is also pretty freaky, honestly. I do like just how disturbing this one is, although far less brutal than most. An acquired taste. Terrifying Moris. Wesker I like for the fact that the survivors fight back. I always like the ones that do this, as it really amps up the lack of rules the entity is imposing whilst this occurs. The survivor punches his glasses off, we see those red eyes light up, and then his tendrils burst from their mouth. It's very fitting for Wesker, and whilst fairly simple, I like the setup especially. Springtrap has a pretty solid Mori, incorporating a whole other contraption as part of it, with this endoskeleton type suit appearing, or I always forget the name of it, and I always get corrected in the comments. I'm sure I will again. Let me know what this is called again. Springtrap then places the survivor into it. It's not that visually effective though, I will say, with the contraption just being a load of saws. I do like the goofy ending though, with him screaming at the survivor. Definitely unique too. Glitchtrap I'll place just after him too, with it being the same Mori, except with a different ending, with Glitchtrap shushing instead. I much prefer this, and I think it's far creepier and eerier, sends a chill down the spine. Bubba has a very brutal Mori, with him having a series of rough but simple movements, stunning then soaring. This one is honestly one of the most shocking. I remember this being one of the first Moris I ever saw, maybe the first. And I was so taken aback when I did see it. I didn't even know what a Mori was back then, and this one really set the tone, I think. I remember getting downed, waiting to be hooked, and I was like, oh wait, he's just killing me. Trickster has a very egotistical Mori, with him showing off his blade skills before throwing down a signed photo, which is soon pierced by a blade too. He also says thank you, with the whole thing feeling like a big performance. It's very well done for him, and sort of tells you everything you need to know, characterizing him perfectly. Nurse obviously has one of the most unique approaches for the early day Moris. She doesn't use a weapon at all, and instead her hands, and it's this weirdly intimate almost Mori, as she gets super close to the survivors and then closes their eyes. It's quite shocking and shows off a humanity present within, yet a horrible brutality too. It gets unique points for sure. Singularity has quite a clinical Mori, with him pinning the survivor, then inserting some kind of liquid. It's maybe acid or something, as what happens after sort of infers it couldn't be anything good. It's maybe a DNA extracting liquid of some kind. Maybe he removes some genes which causes this. I don't know. It's horrible though. Nemesis has a rather brutal stomp and boot twist as the core of his Mori. There's an efficient brutality about this one that makes me think he regrets not doing this during RE3 to Jill all those times he got a chance to. This time he's just brutal and efficient, and it's horrifying. Oni is brutal encapsulated, with him just using anything in his arsenal to release his anger, slamming his blade, then grabbing the tongue and squishing it, just like he did to that lord, before just pounding down. Yeah, it's too much, my man, but does fit him well regardless, and shows off his true power. It's an unpleasant watch though. Demogorgon shows off its power in its Mori, and it feels sort of like it's just tossing around a toy in some moments, with it just wrapping the survivor up and swinging side to side like an excited dog. Very fitting, but brutal. Myers has one of the clearest power dynamics in a Mori, with him easily lifting the survivor from the floor, staring them in the eyes, then plunging his blade in, with his cold eyes staring down at them as they bash away. I do like how the survivor fights back too, and there's resistance. This really adds to just the horror of it, really. Naughty Bear has a Mori, which is one everyone basically wanted for Trapper for quite some time. I think it fits Naughty very well though, and does fit the sillier animation style of him over Trapper, with him sort of tossing the survivor toward the bear trap. Naughty's grin as well is also really very freaky. A fitting Mori for sure, and a good use of the power. Horrifying Moris. Pyramid Head has a very dramatic Mori, with him lifting the survivors up and wrapping them in metal. It's quite a scene he makes before plunging and twisting his blade. I do like how he treats it all like an executioner would. Very effective. Deathslinger has a Mori which shows off just how much pent-up anger this man has. He lifts up the survivor with his spear gun before firing it out. It's pretty horrifying and over the top, but quite a believable thing for him to do. It also just shows off the versatility of the spear gun, honestly, so horribly brutal. Xenomorph has one of the most cinematic Moris, with it lifting the survivor up before facing them down and plunging its smaller mouth into them. It's also a little reference to an alien scene. It's very effective, I think, and the cinematic, slow, thoughtful movements do add a lot to it. Clown has one of the creepier Moris, and largely down to the sounds and simple brutality of it. The way he stamps down repeatedly is fitting for this lazy, indulgent killer, repeating it until he hears a crack and then taking a finger. Extremely fitting for Clown, and one of the more spine-chilling watches. Knight has a very over-the-top tag team Mori, where Knight watches on as his guards each take their turn to attack before Knight does the ending blow. I do think whilst this is a little too much, it is effective how each guard plays a part and does a unique thing to them, with Knight acting as a warden almost, looking on approvingly before finishing it. Kaneki's Mori is quite reminiscent of his devouring of Jason. I really like the use of the Kagune in this one, and how it's so quick and snappy and then slows. It also really shows off Kaneki's true power. The finger snap at the end is a really nice touch too, brutal and efficient. Were-Elk is another quite over-the-top one, with it seeming to reference how Anna's mother died, with Anna now recreating it in Were-Elk form. It's pretty horrific. The axe slam similar to her base Mori, but then just the insane tossing of the survivor onto its antlers and being spun around is crazy. It's a very cinematic Mori too, with the mid part having this anticipation as the Were-Elk just breathes on the survivor. Chucky has a use everything I can approach to his Mori, as he throws a hammer, slams with a baseball bat, then a ruler, then a knife. For such a tiny guy, he has deep pockets. It does show off Chucky's intense brutality though, despite his size, and this fits him well. It's also loaded with references to previous moments in the Chucky films. I think it's very well done. Dracula True Form is one of the most over-the-top Moris, and I'm not sure if it's a good thing. It does feel a bit excessive, but it's also very cinematic and visually horrifying, so still pretty high for me. All of these little mouth tendril things, each being articulated and attacking, is very visually disturbing. Disturbing Moris. Houndmaster has a horrible Mori in my opinion, which pairs together Snug's initial attack with her horribly brutal stomp, which leaves behind quite the mark. This Mori is made even worse by her voice lines, which mock the survivors individually as she does what she does. It fits her so well and is really just horrifying all round, seeing the survivor struggle. Unknown I've always liked the Mori of, because once again it shows us we really don't know what Unknown is. It's another, oh whoa, it can do that? I really like that, with it being sort of a curveball. The Mori itself is also very horrifying, with Unknown plunging its tentacles into the survivors' face holes. Ugh. Vecna has a very brutal Mori which once again incorporates his skeletons. It shows off his power to an almost excessive degree, with him raising the survivor up to him and just stripping them of everything. It's really horrible. I don't think I can show it, but all that remains is a skeleton to join the rest. Really disgusting. Legion has a great Mori, with it being so scrappy. The way the survivors fight back and kick them away is really well done, with this being the clearest case of the size difference being very little. It feels like a scuffle, with Legion eventually winning and the brutality commencing. Sadako's base Mori is incredibly impactful. It's really horrible to look at, and mainly due to the snapping parts. Horrific sounds, really horrible visuals, and just very spine-chilling seeing her unleash her power like this as she simply stands hunched over before them, with her only movements being small head tilts. The ending of the eye as well is of course very effective and iconic. Pinhead has a very creepy Mori, with it being one of few where we don't see what happens to the survivor, with them instead plunging into a blue portal and presumably the labyrinth. It's a shocking sight, and the lead up of the chains grabbing, pulling, then binding them to a pillar is all just so freaky. Very fitting for him. Ghostface is a classic good one, and one of the fan favourite Moris, with Ghosty taking a photo as the survivor barely holds on. It is very character fitting though, and feels quite unique as Moris go, with how silly yet brutal and scary it is. Dredge has a really great and one of the creepiest Moris in the game, with it slowly pinning the survivor with all its tendrils before absorbing them. The final shot of the survivor going in is beyond disturbing. What horrors are they going to face? However, Hag has maybe the most horrifying Mori, with her actually consuming something during it that she took from the survivor, an approach she likely takes with her doing the same thing her captors did to her. She's animalistic during it, going for the neck, then pushing their face down as she feasts and they struggle. It's beyond blah blah blah. Anyway, I do hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching. Be sure to drop your own rankings down below. Thanks, and goodbye.